All right, filming with the cinematic style. This is the second half of, kind of like that meat we're talking about, where the first part was related to story. Now we want to talk about the cinema, because the thing is, our goal as filmmakers is to get the story, because we want to have a strong story, because a strong story is going to keep people watching a film. But a lot of times it's the cinema that's going to hook people. It's or a combination of the cinema and the story that's going to hook people. Filming with the cinematic style. Filming for a cinematic style means that you are creating a film using cinematic elements to visually engage your audience. Practically for a wedding, it means that it's less about making sure that you have the entire shot of something like the toast, but to make sure that the shots you do have are pleasing to the eye and engage the audience to pay attention and retain their attention. So many times during even toasts, how we set up the toast is not how we end. We're always actively looking to see if there's a better angle to capture it. And so many times, like, we'll notice that it looks all right. Then she'll go around on a monopod on another camera and realize that there's a better angle that just looks so much better. And we'll move the cameras to kind of match that. So filming for a cinematic style means that you're always pushing the envelope to try to get a better image. Filming for kind of like a more documentary style, you set it, you have the person in frame, they're lit, it looks good, bam, done, leave it rolling for as long as it takes. Cinematic style, always be thinking to yourself, how can it be better? Because you can always make adjustments. And when it comes down to your creative edit, just because you start off with one thing, by the time you find the ultimate angle, those are the shots that you could be using for your creative edit. And let's be honest, we all have time. It feels good to just sit back and let things happen, but we have time to make adjustments and to get a better shot. So it's just the mind frame or the mindset of pushing the envelope. How can we do better? How can we get better shots and just getting it, just capturing it in a generic way? Said this before, no filmmaker is 100% cinematic or 100% narrative. Just find that balance of what you're comfortable with, what you like. Shooting for a cinematic look is part being prepared and part being opportunistic. Know when the good shots are likely going to happen, but also always be engaged with what's happening. Some of our best shots occur from being opportunistic and seizing a moment where a moment's happening. For example, catching the bride and groom in amazing light, sharing a moment between each other when neither photographer or videographer actively engage with them. So do you guys understand what I mean by being opportunistic? Because it's just always be engaged with what's happening. It's easy, it feels good on a wedding day to have a moment of rest. We know it, we love it. So easy to just be like, all right, well, nothing's happening. And which is really funny since we just had a wedding this past Saturday where it's really weird, but we ended up in a conversation with the photographer and planner. All of us were thinking that someone else was responsible for the bride and groom because we were waiting for them to come. And it comes after 30 minutes of talking,
We realized they were there.
We realized they were there.
The planner didn't know.
We thought the planner
was going to tell us.
Anyway, long story short, we were not opportunistic at that time, and we lost a lot of good light.
And we lost an opportunity to do some letter writing and stuff too that we could have done.
We did. Yeah. Being opportunistic, always be engaged with what's happening. Always be looking for moments that are happening. Like I said, it feels good to have a down moment. You can still have a down moment, but still be engaged with the action that's happening. Actually,
I want to say something really quick, kind of to piggyback what you're saying. We keep talking about the letters. I know that some people do them, some people don't. We're not trying to harp on do letters, but if they don't happen during prep, it's not the biggest deal, because if you're at the church, there's a lot of downtime at the church, and you can still find a window or a spot at the church to do stuff like that too. So they don't have to be crammed into bride prep or anything like that.
Piggybacking on her piggyback. There's a lot of times when I get less than ideal groom prep footage. And I remember one of the first times that this happened was there was this wedding we did. The groom did not want us to be there. If anyone have a wedding where the groom does not want you to be there?
It was the same wedding. They didn't want any audio.
Yes,
yeah.
for the trailer film. Groom did not want us to be there. It was very evident. And I got the worst groom prep shots I've ever gotten. And Kaye was able to take him aside in the church right before the ceremony. She found good light, fabricated a couple shots of him getting ready, and those were the shots that ended up in the cinematic edit. I spent an hour and a half with him in preparations, and zero of the shots ended up in the film. This was around the beginning of that journey that I took, realizing that I'm pounding pavement, getting stuff that's just not important, and I'm shooting for a documentary edit that doesn't exist. Sometimes I'm shooting for a documentary edit. I hope to sell them one day, but I'm neglecting the cinematic creative edit that we've already promised them. And it's really the creative edits that are going to drive you better business, more business, and stuff like that.
Just because you said that, so you're saying that if someone doesn't initially order the doc edit, you still have the ability to produce it if they ask for it later? Mm-hmm.
What I like to tell people is that if we know we're doing it ahead of time, we'll generally let the cameras roll a little bit longer. But I'm still going to try to sell a documentary edit after the fact. We'll go over upsells later.
What's the usual time on a cinematic edit on average?
You mean how long it takes to...
How long is the video?
How long are our cinematic videos? Our videos start at 4 to 6 minutes. I would say our average is probably 8 to 10. We've been bringing down the length of our videos, of our films that we're delivering to the client, because we're finding that we can make them tighter and better. Because have you ever done an edit and you're just like, wow, you promised them like 12 to 15, but this would make an amazing 8 to 10. And you find yourself just putting in footage that is just kind of like subpar to the rest of the footage. You almost just want to call them up and be like, look, your wedding was pretty dull, but I can give you... I can give you an amazing 8 to 10 minute film, or I can give you a so-and-so. I've never done that. I've wanted to, but I have done the reverse. I have told them that you're getting this, but I can get an amazing
Actually, no, we did do that. There was one film that just fell at 10 minutes, and it was great. It was done, but we promised her 12 minute. So what we did was, hey, it's really great as a 10-minute film, but since we were a little bit shorter, we'll throw in the formal dances for you because they weren't included. So we gave her a little value add, and that she was happy. So.
Yeah, and it kind of this also kind of falls back in the whole thinking like a cinematic edit or a cinematic filmmaker is more about, because if you're thinking like a documentary filmmaker, it doesn't really matter how long the film is because you're just delivering a film. This is all the stuff that happened. Take it or leave it. When you're thinking about a cinematic style, you're thinking about, once you start pushing the envelope and getting better and really raising the bar in your own business, you're going to be realizing that, you have X amount of shots that are like solid. You're going to have this many shots that are pretty good. Then it just goes down from there. And you're going to want to put less and less of the pretty good shots in your final creative edit. And so for us, we just keep kind of reducing the lengths we're giving our clients because we just want the films to be better and better, more impactful, and we want only the best shots in. So even with your own business, if you're promising lengths of films and you would feel, honestly, there's probably so many companies out there that if you're producing longer films, if you produce shorter films, I can almost guarantee you that you'll probably end up making more money and doing less work. It's a win-win for everyone. You're producing better films, you're doing less work, the client's happy, you're happy, and then what the great thing is, the shorter your film is, the more impactful it is, the more they love sharing it, and the higher the chance you sell them a doc edit too. So it's kind of like a win-win-win all the way around. All right, make for a successful lighting. We've already talked about lighting a lot. To us, the most important element in cinema is lighting or light. I would rather have an old camera with amazing lighting than a newer camera shooting at high ISO. To elevate your brand, I will harp on this to the day that I quit and even afterwards. Get better lighting. Look for better lighting. The better the lighting in your film, the more, I guarantee you, the more money you will be charging. The more people who will be emailing you, inquiring about your dates, the more money you will be able to charge. There is a very correlating effect of better lighting, more money. Guaranteed. High ISO is not a cinematic look. It's a necessity to being an event videographer and not on a film set with a gaffer in a controlled environment, but should be the exception, not the rule. It's most likely for the doc edit portion, so probably won't look good enough for the creative edit. Kind of talked about this before. Please just don't bump your ISO all the way up. Just look for better lighting. If you don't have better lighting, supplement it with like a little portable LED. LEDs have gotten so good, and honestly, they're so cheap. Everyone should have at least one in their bag.
What was that? What?
Just like an LED light. Everyone should have an LED light that if it's like raining, even when it's raining, honestly, there's still light coming to the window. It's rare that you'd be in a situation that's literally no light. shooting in a cellar maybe, or
Which we've done.
cellar is the exception because you don't want to shoot in this room because this room looks ugly. Sorry, Avalon. This room is going to look ugly. It's not going to translate well to film. But a cellar is a different story because a cellar could look really cool. And so you could, just point a light at the ceiling, let it bounce and fall and look really good. So have an LED light in your kit. Light the events, ceremony, toasts, and etc. We talked about the ceremony. If I'm the officiant at the front, we would take a light, put it off in the corner because we don't want it to be part of the pictures or part of the film. Shine the light down the aisle, put it, we flood it enough so that the light is reaching from here to maybe like down there somewhere because we want we want the bride walking through the light as she's walking through the seating. Light your ceremonies if you can, but remember you're front lighting it because it's about the processional.
We've also put a light in the back if it is just a really dark setup here, and we'll just do a soft flood. But,
Anyone do Jewish weddings? So you know that if you do Jewish wedding and you have the huppah in the center and you have like 47 people crowding around a small little box in the center of the stage and there's no light coming in, it's hard enough finding an angle of your camera to get in. But sometimes you can put a light in from far away. That's why I love having these lights because I can really direct them into the center and just get a little bit of light. I don't try to alter the mood too much, but I will tell the client we need a little bit of light because if we have no light, we can't do any filming. And honestly, the photographer is going to back you up because they want light too. Light shaping versus flat lighting. We talked about this before. Avoid flat lighting. Right now, when I look at Kaye, it's pretty flat lighting, but for the sake of the video we're doing, flat lighting is fine.
Do we have a light with us that we could show the demonstration?
We have the LED light. I don't have the battery with it, but
Oh, well.
light shaping or light contouring is just about creating dimensional light, and you do that by having the key, the fill, the hair light. You want to see shadows, and you want your light source to be tall. You want to see shadows underneath the chin.
He's talking about for toast specifically.
Well, anything that you, okay, toast
I'm not thinking about that
specifically.
when I'm getting bride prep.
Right, okay, that's fine. For toast specifically, you want to see shadow underneath the chin. That's an easy giveaway that your lighting is good. If you're seeing everything underneath here is exposed when the person is looking straight, your light source is not high enough. Mm-hmm. And that shadow is going to create that separation between their neck and their head.
It's going to be a nice jawline kind of.
It's going to be a nice jawline. That's how you do light shaping, light contouring, whatever you want to call it, to create a cinematic light feel. Does this kind of make sense to you all? I know we all have some, experience with light, but if you're going for a cinematic look, you need to make sure you have these types of elements because it's really going to up it. As I'm looking at Sarah and I'm sorry, what was your name? Yeah, Lance. As I'm looking at Sarah and Lance, if you all take a look at them and make them uncomfortable for just a second, you can see that they actually have a nice hair light behind them. The way that the light is hitting their hair is creating a nice separation. And what you'll notice is that if you're looking at them in a camera, it's actually going to separate them from the background. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the biggest differences between dramatic or just cinematic lighting versus flat lighting. Otherwise, their heads are going to blend in. There's no separation. It looks like they're in the same plane as the background behind them. Sometimes you can bokeh that out, but for that ugly yellow soft wall that's back there, you cannot bokeh that out. It's going to look ugly. But having that hair light will create that separation and will really kind of pull them away. Looks really good in cinematic. Bi-color lights versus mono versus RGB. We kind of talked about this before. Anyone have any questions about the types of colors? And for our lights, we actually have a gel in them. I'm not sure they're in it now, but that's how we get kind of two different colors. Whether or not it's we want it to look tungsten or if we're matching for outside. Tungsten versus LED. LED is catching up to tungsten in terms of the way that how good the light looks, the amount of throw you get from LED, the amount of control. Traditionally, only with tungsten could you get bright, could you get a really good narrow throw, and LED is really catching up. So LED is a very viable alternative, especially considering that LED has advantages over tungsten, in which LED can be powered by battery. And I mean, I've heard of stories of people doing like beach weddings, and they bring an LED light, like a Proctolite with them on a beach, and are able to light the whole scene with the Proctolite. And those things last a couple of hours. So LEDs are a really good alternative, and honestly, I would even suggest that LEDs could live in tandem with a tungsten light, and they're both tools and both serve a good purpose. A lot of people have just moved to LEDs though. They're great for people who do a lot of like rustic barn weddings because they're hard to find plugs, or they're doing a lot of weddings out in the middle of fields. They're great for that scenario. For us, we do a lot of ballroom stuff. The tungstens just have a little bit better of a throw. And I would probably talk too much about this. You can ask me questions about that if you have any.
Are you always plugging in these lights for toast? Like,
Yes.
They're on. Yeah. I mean, these are on for dancing too, for formal dances and the dancing footage.
For 95% of our weddings, finding a plug really is not that tough. We do a lot of ballroom stuff. But but a different. And I totally get that, and that's why LEDs are godsend for so many other people, especially in different markets in Texas and Alabama. I don't know about Nashville, but there's so many weddings in which you're just doing the reception outside, and at best maybe you could do like a 50 to a 70 yard run with a cable to bring power to where you're going, or you can just have a battery powered light. So that's really allowed for people who do those types of weddings to have cinematic films, because they can bring portable lighting that was, 5 years ago was unattainable for that type of wedding. But now it's something you can easily bring.
The party. And DJ tells you that those lights are missing with his lights. How much of a party do you need, or how much do you fight?
I don't take advice from the DJ. But, we have had clients. We had one client who the groom was 100% adamant that he wanted it to feel like a club, and he wanted the lights off. And so we had like 2 songs where the lights were on, and then the rest of the night we were just filming with no lights. And it was very flat, and we ended up, even when it's 100%, even when your lights are off, we were surprised we were able to find some moments where there was some sort of ambient light that was creating some sort of
I think there was a
contouring.
band, and so there was enough light coming from the stage to create dynamic lighting.
Honestly, it sucks when it happens because it's not going to look as good.
But I do remember, you're talking about the one at the Biltmore Ballrooms when we went that off. I do remember though, he wanted the lights off. We turned them off. We didn't want to fight or anything. But then they did the horror and like, turn the lights on. I don't care what he said. So that was a good cinematic moment. We had to get that good. So we turned the lights on for that, then turned them right back off after. Really? It's funny.
I've had clients say that, oh, we're killing the mood, there's not enough people on the dance floor, and it's kind of frustrating because they think that the lights is what's causing people to not come to
It's really not.
If you try to tell them, it's like, you try not to tell them, it's like, well, you have to pull a crowd.
Right.
You also want to be sure, though, that for the people who say you're killing the mood, you also want to be sure you're not flooding it with too much light. Because a lot of times when people talk to us and say, "Hey, look, your lights are killing the mood," we'll try to compromise and say, "Look, we'll turn our lights down. We'll make it less noticeable. We're still going to have enough light to get what we need. It's not ideal, but we try to find that compromise before, in hopes that they're not going to just tell us to turn it off completely."
I had guests just turn the light off.
Yeah, we have to.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
How do you turn your light off?
Yeah, plug it.
Flip the switch. Just walk over and turn it off.
So usually when your lights are bothering people, that means they're too low. So if you get them real high up, we've had a lot less complaints since we've made sure they're as high.
I think my cheetah stands are 8.
Yeah, that's
You
too
want
low.
to be 12, 13 feet.
Yeah.
These lights are at about 13 feet. I think that one's about 13.
That one's
That one
lower.
would be 11 or 12. The higher you are, the less complaints you're going to get. But if you're in small spaces, you're going to still have problems because it's really going to be hard. Some spaces are just hard. We're trying to complement the mood. We're obviously we're lighting it up, but I like to have long throws of like beams hitting the floor. I'm just trying to kind of hit the heads. I'm not
And
trying
we're on
to.
a dimmer too, so we can dim it too. So it's just. Yeah.
But it's not just about the dimmer, it's about the shaping of the light, and that's why Fresnels have an advantage over shaping. You don't want to just have like this, like all this light everywhere where everyone just looks like I look right now. That's not what you want to go for. And you know, I just try to cut the heads off of everyone, because that's what's going to look good on the film. You don't need to get the feet or the waist. I try to just, you know, narrow the beam,
Kinda like
so that way it's
graze the top of everybody.
just kind of like from here to here. And when you have the light really far away, and it's just like, you know, you have a razor thin, you're just kind of doing the heads of everyone, has a really cool look on film too, and less people complain about it if you can achieve it, which is hard sometimes.
How are you guys lighting your curse dances?
Well, right now we actually changed up our reception lighting a little bit, but John
Did we?
was, yeah, because we used to put them diagonal from each other. Now we put them by the dance floor. So we just put them on each side of the dance floor, like by each corner of the band or DJ or whatever. And we shoot at a right angle of them. So it's a dimensional light. We don't shoot towards the light, and we don't shoot with the lights at our back. We're shooting sideways. So it's creating,
A triangle, kind of?
no,
Because y'all aren't shooting right into each other.
we're on the same side. So we'll be shooting.
You're both shooting on the same side.
Well, John will be on Ronin for formal dances. And actually for Ronin, because we have to shoot a higher aperture, he actually may shoot with the lights behind his back because he needs more light. But for me, I'm on the 70-200, and I'm getting like just side lighting. When they're rotating, there's a nice dimension when the lights are off to the side from my angle. So I don't know if I answered your
Almost
question.
like you're getting a shadow in the face. You're almost getting a shadow in the face, right?
We don't want to put them in shadows, but we just want dimension. We just don't want that flat light.
Not shadow, it's just that one side is brighter than the other.
Okay.
So
Okay.
like even when I have two lights on the dance floor, sometimes what I'll do is like I'll put one at like 75% and the other at like 60%. And just that difference, so even at certain angles when both lights are hitting someone, you can see a difference on both sides of the face. So it doesn't look flat, there's still some contouring.
What was, oh, no, go ahead.
But then you're just standing on the sides, and you're shooting like by the dance floor, straight down, you're off on the side on the 70.
Yeah, shooting across. And that's usually really beautiful because there's florals and stuff and people standing around, something that's just really nice to have as a background, or candles. I really don't like having the stage in the background, and it's really usually if the band's behind me, again, that's not great for lighting, especially if they have crazy colors. So yeah, shooting from the side, sideways on the dance floor. That's what we do.
Are you like physically changing the position of the light between the toes and the...
I do.
Well, not really. I mean, we have in a pinch.
I have, sometimes what I'll do is we also have the torch LEDs. And so let's say we have a toast come up. Let's say both of the lights are on the side of the stage, and I'll use it to backlight the toaster, but then I'll put a torch LED on the floor to front light them.
And the lights are already lighting the bride and groom. So they're good and all set, and we'll just light the front of the toaster with the LED.
We used to go more nuts, moving these lights around for the toast, but now we've gotten in the habit of just using the torch LEDs to kind of be the fills where we need the fills, or the key lights where we need the key lights. We can do an awful lot with those torch LEDs to create a very attractive light that will work in tandem with these other lights to create the effect of what we're going for.
Does this work because you're shooting in really similar spaces? All the ballrooms have a certain layout, so you kind of can place your lights and know that. Because I feel like, I don't know.
It's always like a mathematical formula
I
when
feel
you're
like it's
walking
always
into a new
different.
space.
Yeah, it's always different.
Like deciding this the day of, like.
Well, normally wherever the band is or wherever the DJ is, there's power. So that's where we set up. So it helps hide the stands, helps people from tripping over the stands. Maybe that's why we haven't got sandbags. So yeah, we're not trying to shoot into the lights. We're just trying to shoot where there's dimension.
I would say this, when we're working with bands, I will more or less put, like if the way those two lights are set right now, like if the stage or the cameras and the table back there were, I like to have both lights next to the band highlighting kind of like the front. And the reason is because a lot of times when you have bands, the people are facing the band. But sometimes with DJs, since there's no kind of like forward position, that's when I'll try to crisscross the lights, because then I want to because with the DJ, a lot of times you get a lot more people kind of interacting in different parts of the dance floor. I mean, it's sometimes it's random. It's just whatever, lighting arrangements I can put. I've walked into a lot of different situations, like last Saturday, where there's like literally no place for the light. And you just have to make a place for the light.
Small reception.
It was a small hall, Georgian Terrace. I mean, they and every part of the wall where there could be a light, they put a table there, and it's just we couldn't put a light there. So I mean, the two basic configurations we do are either both of our lights are on the sides of the stage of like a band, or we put them crisscrossing together. So one light's in that corner and the other light's in this corner. And then when I do that, it's important that both of the intensities of these lights are different. And the reason is because you can end up with a flat image if they're intersecting on one person and they're perfectly lighting someone 360 degrees. So in case it happens, if you have one of the lights at a different brightness setting, at the very least there'll be some shadowing because one of the lights is a different intensity.
And if the light is here, if we do a diagonal setup, we're not shooting here because this is going to be flat light because we have a light behind us. But anywhere else suddenly gets dimensional. We also don't want to shoot into a light because I don't really like the lens flare stuff. But anywhere else is going to be, the lights are coming this way and people are getting lit on their sides and they're turning and because they're dancing and stuff. It's really beautiful. And they have hair light because of that light. So we just try not to make sure the light's behind us.
And any given reception, I might move the lights 3 times.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking. Because have you ever had one of those weddings where you have this big dance floor, but like everyone is in the corner, and it's just like you're like moving the lights to where the people are because sometimes you just have to be a little reactive.
We can adjust all through the reception. So.
Two-part question. One, I guess, preference, and second, difference. As you're like where the toaster is, and so one situation could be one light is there and one light is there versus one light is there and one light is there. What sort of preference and difference is it creating?
For the toast, I like to have the lights crisscrossed because then it's really easy to create that front light and back light for the toaster and the toast receiver.
It depends on the setup too. A lot of times the bride and groom are not in a great spot to even look at the toaster. Like sometimes they're at an angle and it kind of screws us up a little bit. But if it's like a perfect scenario where here's a bride and groom, here's a toaster, then yeah, we can put a light here and a light here, and they're lighting each other and hair lighting each other. I don't know if that makes sense. We need more diagrams.
We need more. We could do a whole thing just on lighting positions. One other thing. Hold on one sec. With the whole thing, we prefer to have the bride and groom sitting down. We think it's generally awkward when the bride and groom are standing up next to the toast giver. Sometimes it works. We've had a couple situations where it kind of has worked, but generally, like if I'm the toast giver and she's the toast receiver, and you guys are the crowd, it's like the toast giver a lot of times doesn't know where to look. And when you're trying to film that, it's just awkward because you keep, switching. Either they're talking to the crowd, then they're like this, talking to the person. For this creative edit, it's complicated and it doesn't look as good. We had like one exception for that where, to the St. Regis wedding where everyone circled around. It honestly looked really beautiful. But 99% of the times, it just looks better for them to, if I'm the toast giver for like Kirk or, who's running the cameras back there, if he's the toast receiver, I'm facing one direction. So that when you're setting up the camera for the toaster, it's easy because they're looking in one direction. You don't have to follow them around too much. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of, so many planners, we're never going to get off this. So many planners, we just, they want the bride and groom to stand up next to the toaster. A lot of photographers want that because
it's all in the same shot.
It's all in the same shot. Then you have the bands who are inviting the toaster up on stage, and they've got like 47 different LED colors on them, and they look like an alien because of the skin tones. And there's just so many reasons why that shot doesn't look, between the lighting, between the background stuff, it's just like so ugly. That's one of those situations that we exert more control over than any other part of the day because it's so important for our edits. We're going to get into this maybe a little bit more when we're talking about the packages, but focusing on a narrative, focusing on the toast between the rehearsal dinner, between the day of the wedding, is one of the single-handed biggest things that we did to our films that really brought us into a new price point. And so having these toasts that set the mood, that also carry the story, is just so important for our films. And that's why I fight so hard for good audio. I fight so hard for good lighting. I fight so hard for all these logistics to, you have to exert some sort of control or influence of the situation. You can't force them to do it if they don't want to, but just kind of taking control of the situation is essential to getting that good, those good imagery and audio.
I think it's really easy to explain if you're talking to the planner or the photographer and they're trying to put the bride and groom somewhere else. We're just saying, we just tell them that this is really actually a big moment in our films. Our films revolve around the toasts, and do you please mind if we could put them where our good light is and all these things? And then they're like, okay. I feel like toast doesn't really matter for photo, and toast doesn't really matter, whatever. It's like toast is our thing. We need full control over it because that's such a big deal.
Either way, the photographer can still get great imagery because they can still get a really good moment, but it doesn't matter to them where they stand.
But usually the table that they're at is already decorated. It's a beautiful shot. There's really no reason not to put them at their table. So
if there's one part of the day that you can't say fight, whatever they
already said it.
Fight
fine.
that you fight for the strongest, it's going to be at least for us, it's the toast. It's so important. Everything else we can kind of make do with, but the toast really has to. I mean, we could probably create a film just on the different toast angles that we've gotten over the last year, and the positionings of people and how it looks, and you can tell it sets a mood. It sets a romantic it really sets a cinematic mood for your film.
Two common things that happen during toast. Do you clear with them so they'll do it? One of them being servers, trying to serve drinks to our.
We have no control over the servers.
The other one is that photographer with the 35 and the 24.
Photographers should not be on a 35 and 24 during toasts. I would hand them a different lens to use.
But when the photographers do get in our shots, it's like we're still, once we're on our tripods and we have these angles set and they stand in front of us, they can scoot anywhere, just off to the left.
And they should have their own light source
and so
too.
I'll go tap them on the shoulder. Hey, do you mind scooting over? You're in front of my camera. So they have the flexibility to move. So even if they are really close, we usually shoot kind of at an angle anyway, so they could just scoot over.
They don't need our lights. They should have their own lights, and they can create their own dramatic lighting in whatever position they're in. It's we have ownership of this angle. And they can shoot over our shoulders and get the same shot, but they shouldn't be in front of us or in the frame. You said you had a two-part question. Did you get to the second part? Yeah. Okay. Question back there? No? Stretching? We need to do a 7th inning stretch.
So right now, I guess it must be our budget range right now or something, but we don't have a lot of toast and stuff at the wedding. Most of the audio that I get is from the rehearsal the night before, and
I'm sorry, it's from the what?
from the rehearsal.
Okay.
And so, most of the time with the weddings that we're shooting, there's nothing afterwards. If it is, it's super impromptu, and it's DJ blasting on them, and that it's kind of not usually a pretty scene. But with the rehearsal dinner, most of the time it's super casual, and it's usually a tight space. Do y'all ever have to deal with that?
All the
This
time.
last Friday was the worst, smallest space we've ever had.
There was barely room for people to back their chairs up and get out of the room. And so I had to use natural light.
Our rehearsal dinner was at nighttime. It was
have a
raining
picture.
outside. It was 1/4 the space that we're in right now. I mean, it was so small. It was just, you have to make the best of it. But, you shoot tighter, have the microphone. The good news is they probably can't move around too much either. You can create, turn off the lights if you can, create the mood, create the lighting that you want to create, have your lights available. There's different things you can do with different angles.
I texted you the picture. Can I pull it up on the screen from last Friday? Or do we have time?
I don't have internet on my computer. I'm scared to turn it on because then all those unread emails pop in. Maybe at the end we'll show it to you. But we deal with it all the time. And unfortunately, even when we have higher end clients, a lot of them still have the rehearsal dinner at some, it might be a nice place, but it's still small. And we still have to fight with those logistics. One of the nice things too is if you control the light, if you turn the lights off and you put a directional light on someone, let's say a torch LED, create the mood lighting. If the lights are low, people are less apt to walk out of the light because it feels uncomfortable for them to walk into the darkness. So it is a secret to kind of like keep people there. Plus, you want to turn off those lights that are there and put your own lights on. Light up what you want to light up. Don't light up what you don't want to light up, and kind of try to your best to create the mood. There's some times when you could do that and find the right angle, and it can look super high end with just the right angle, the right perspective, and the right amount of lighting. And even we've gotten into the habit of maybe shooting up a little bit too. And we like the look that it gives. So if, just having the tripod a little bit lower, shooting up. Especially useful in hiding the buffet behind them or whatever. If they're standing in front of like a buffet, whatever. Do we answer all that or?
We should probably move to the next slide.
Okay.
How many more do we have?
47. All right, just want to touch on depth of field. Not everything that's cinematic is high bokeh, but high bokeh does have a cinematic feel. Do y'all know what I mean by high bokeh? When you see like all the blurred background, iPhone portrait mode, whatever. It does have a cinematic feel. It's used to draw the viewer in. Not every shot should necessarily have high bokeh, but we suspect the reason that high bokeh is great for wedding films is that since it's not a controlled set, we can't control the background. This allows us to shoot in any direction without consequence of unwanted background items that we can't fix in post. It's like if you're shooting in this room and you're shooting a subject, you don't want to see the orange exit sign. You don't want to see the light stand in the background. Controlled film sets, because the people who are in film, who have that film background and got into weddings, are so anti-bokeh because they know that us wedding videographers abuse the heck out of it. And, spoiler alert, clients love it. And, sometimes it becomes a matter of, are we filming for our own personal selves, or are we filming because because we want our clients to love the films? But, it's like you can't control the background like you can in a film set. You don't have control. If I'm shooting in that direction, I don't want to see the cameras that are over there. Obviously I can shift over a little bit, but high bokeh allows you to blur out that background. You don't notice the water bottle sitting in the background. The other thing about bokeh too is that it differentiates yourself from amateur videographers, and it's an easy way to look more higher end because amateur, I'm not trying to say amateur videographers, but videographers who don't have professional gear can't get bokeh. But a lot of the prosumer gear that is available can get that look and feel. And I think clients have that perceived feeling that it looks higher end, and clients are actually willing to spend more for it. That's been my perception. It's not necessarily fact. I wouldn't say that this is fact and this is true for everyone. There are obviously great filmmakers, great wedding filmmakers who don't necessarily have high bokeh, but they still sell $20,000, $30,000 wedding films. So it's not a direct correlation, but you can use it to your advantage to get more money, and you can use it to have a better looking film because having some high bokeh looks great comparatively to not having it at all. Clients, it's like drones. Clients love it. You have a drone in your film, and clients will pay like much more money for your film just because there's a drone shot. It is what it is. It's more of a business decision than it is creative. You're doing it for your client because your client's gonna love it. Yeah. Only prosumer and professional gear can achieve high bokeh, so this makes your video feel higher end. People coming from film hate it. We just talked about that. Seriously, a lot of film purists hate how everything is high bokeh in wedding films. Anyone like that here? Hate the high bokeh look and feel? It's fine. You can be honest. You don't need it. It can be a tool. It can also be a crutch. But like I said, a lot of clients do love it. So, and a lot of times I'm shooting for the client. 24 versus 30 versus faster frame rates, just for the cinematic look and feel. You all know about frame rates. We shoot in 24. A lot of people shoot in 30. We also shoot in 60 for that slow motion footage. Any questions on frame rates? You've all pretty...
I've always shot a lot of things like just almost the whole day on 60 when I'm not filming anything that's 4K. Is there any real downsides to doing that?
Depends if you ask a purist. downsides to shooting the entire day in 60 frames. I really don't think so. I don't think you'd have any client that would notice that your software's transcoding 60 frames to look like 24 frames. I mean, if you put them side by side, I'm sure you'd be able to see a minute difference between the two. But we can't do that because with our cameras, 60 frames just takes up too much card space, expensive card space in our 1DX Mark IIs. So we can't do that. But I know people who do that all day long and they're fine with it. I don't think you'd ever get people complaining, except the film purists who say you shouldn't do that. Higher frame rates slowed down in post can create beautiful slow motion footage. You know that. Speed ramping in post can also create a trendy cinematic feel. Again, we're just talking about kind of like different cinematic elements for your films. Don't forget the 180-degree rule like I do, which is just keeping your shutter at twice your frame rate. And if you don't do that, you'll notice some problems. What do you notice, Kaye, when I don't do that?
Well, for dancing, you can actually literally see the blur for dancing shots. So.
It's a rule in film that you want to keep your shutter speed twice your frame rate. And the rule exists because they say that that's what your eye perceives. That's closest to what the human eye actually sees, the look and feel of motion, blur, and movement. So that's why we have the rule. Cameras, full frame versus crop sensor. We kind of talked about that before. Full frame cameras, you're going to get higher bokeh, which is going to allow more light. You can get more light in with full frame cameras. Crop sensors can have an advantage because we use our 5D Mark IVs in 4K with a 1.7 crop, which actually helps us when we're like far and away in a long ceremony space. So we use that to our advantage. Probably in the future, we'll all be using cameras with little to no crop, so I don't think it'll really be an issue later on. But it's really just about the sensor size. Just it affects the depth of field and it affects the amount of light it lets in. The biggest things. I'm not going to try to convince you. What is Nikon? I don't know what Nikon is, but apparently they're a major contender. We all know our cameras. I'm not going to try to convince you that your cameras aren't good. DSLR versus mirrorless for small cinema cameras. Probably a lot of us are moving from DSLRs to mirrorless. A couple of us, like Ryan, probably still shoot on cinema cameras, which small compact cinema cameras can be great. A major difference between DSLR and mirrorless is going to be weight. And actually, as we get more into mirrorless, from my understanding, is especially on the Canon side, I can't speak on the Panasonic or Sony sides, but the more we get into mirrorless, from my understanding, we're going to actually see lenses with lower apertures. That Canon is actually releasing lenses with as low as like 0.8, 1.2s more consistently because they're able to put the lens closer to the sensor. And because DSLRs have that mirror in between it, you can't get as much light in, but now they'll be able to get more light in. Mirrorless cameras are great for photography too, as they get better because you can actually do silent shooting, which is great. And the more photographers that go to mirrorless cameras, it's better for all of us because we won't be hearing that loud shutter that they have. Newer is probably better with how, I guess this one we sped through the proofreading. Newer is probably better with how fast technology is developing. We all know that. All these cameras are every 2 years. It's like they're monumental differences. Lenses, lens choices. Lower aperture lenses let in more light and allow for lower ISO. Always great to, one of the great things about full frame cameras is that, traditionally not only does full frame allow for more light generally because the sensor is just with how it works, but also you generally get lenses that have lower apertures for full frame cameras. So lower light, lower aperture, better for the light. Vary the focal lengths for better visual storytelling. One of the biggest things I noticed about films that are probably in the $1,500 to $2,500 price point range is that there's not enough varied focal length. And I think it's really important for a cinematic field, for a higher end wedding film, to have varied focal length, between the wide, between the tight and the medium. And, kind of varying between those different focal lengths, my opinion, gets you kind of like a better film. Did you have a thought on that?
I go over it tomorrow in my editing.
Goes over tomorrow, editing. Newer isn't necessarily better. There are tons of great lenses available used. You know, we all know that. I mean, you can find so many great lenses used. Most of us probably are buying lenses from like B&H or Adorama used departments, and you're saving like 20 to 30%. You know, I used to think that, you know, all my Canon lenses would last forever. Then Canon surprised me, hey, we're going to the RF mounts. So they're not as, because they were on EF, now they're going to RF because they want me to reinvest my entire lens collection and make me spend more money. But, you could, but. There's a lot of people, I've met a lot of photographers shooting on 20-year-old lenses. A good lens is a good lens, and if it still works, it's still a good investment. Just want to talk about movement for kind of a cinematic film. Am I going too fast? I just want to be respectful of your time, and I just want to try to get through this one thing. Does anyone have any questions before I keep moving? We all know movement is important, especially in shots where the subject is stationary. That's important because, you know, for good cinematic, for good kind of like cinematics, you want movement in your shot. You know, if I want to get a shot of that Christmas tree, I mean, of course the lighting is horrible on it, it's flat. But, you know, if I just get a shot of the Christmas tree, it's going to be very boring. Obviously, if I have a gimbal or whatever and I'm creating that movement, it's going to turn an otherwise boring shot into an engaging shot. And that's the type of thing we want to do for our films, because the more engagement we have, the more engaging cinematic shots we have, the more the viewer is going to be intrigued by it and continue watching. So generally, you always want there to be movement. Sometimes the subject is moving. Like if I'm getting a shot of someone writing notes down, that's the movement. But if I'm getting a shot of someone who's still, if they're just frozen still, it looks weird. And you generally always want there to be some sort of movement, unless it's a creative decision. You know, maybe you're creating a film where you want it to feel like time is standing still, and you want little movement because that gives that type of a feeling. But generally speaking, movement is good. Gimbals, drones, sliders, and hand holding. I mean, we all know the different types of things that can create that type of movement. Single axis versus multi-axis movement, the parallax effect. I will definitely go over this with the drone class. One of my favorite things to do, and I've been doing it for the last like 6 to 9 months, is creating multi-axis movement with your gimbals. You know, this affects with the drone. This affects with any sort of gimbal that you have, whether it's Ronin S, the crane, you name it. What I mean by the parallax is it's actually creating 2 or 3 or more axis movement. And because traditionally you're thinking of movement is maybe you're just doing a push, or maybe you're just kind of like doing a dolly back and forth. It's movement, it's better than stationary. But if you can actually keep your subject in frame, and you can create kind of like what you see from a jib shot, and I do this with my Ronin M all the time, where I'm kind of like doing this, and I'm creating multi-axis movement while keeping the subject in the center of the frame. It's just a really intriguing shot that adds a lot of cinematic value to what you're doing. So something to practice. If you're bored at a wedding, you already have your 15,000 different dancing shots, and you just need some experience, try creating multi-axis movements with your gimbals. You can even accomplish it with hand holding if you've got IBIS. Try it out. I guarantee you'll love the results of that.
Also, what I want to add with the parallax, or even just shooting on a gimbal, is what we recently discovered. Like, most of the time I feel like people default when you're shooting on a gimbal just to shoot on a wide lens. It's really beautiful. We've even experimented putting 100 macro on a gimbal, and it's hard to get the shot, but when you do, it's like pure magic. Okay, like that really, like especially if you're following somebody and they stay in frame and you've got that bokeh, but the whole background is moving, but you're
fast.
But you're just on that subject. Like, it's like amazing. But 100 is hard. We shoot with the 16 to 35, so a lot of times we'll just dial into the 35, which is a medium, and it still gives a really nice effect.
To fully credit who I saw first really doing that was Matt Harris with Film Poets. He was the first one that I knew that was really doing tighter lenses on her gimbal to kind of create that look. So I think Matt has done some educational videos on that. I definitely implore you to look it up. Look at the type of shots he's getting with his 100, which in effect on a 1DX Mark II is really a 135
It might be why it's so
with the crop
hard.
factor. So if you're thinking about 100 on our cameras, it would really have to be with an 85.
Yeah.
It's funny you said that. I recently got a 135 lens, and just for fun, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna put it on the Ronin. So put on the Ronin, and just got my sister to go out and do some modeling shots with it and stuff. And it was, like you said, it was really good look at shots, but the ones I got were just really, really special. My only thing with using that way, unfortunately, is like I have one gimbal, and it just takes so much time to rebalance a longer lens like that. But something that I have done that has definitely helped a lot is just using a 24 to 105
Yeah.
lens and balancing it balancing gimbal at like 50, so it's like the lens halfway out and stuff. So that way you can kind of get multiple focal lengths and looks and stuff.
Yeah, that's great.
On the gimbal, so.
I can't remember. Have they updated that lens? Is that?
It's still an f4, but it's a lot sharper.
We shoot higher aperture anyways in the Ronin.
Yeah.
But I feel like when we had the 24 105, it wasn't super sharp.
No, the
So
Mark
that'd be-
the Mark II version is a lot better from what I've
Okay.
heard than the Mark
Okay.
One. The new
But
one
I mean,
that's
that
out
would
now.
be a great. It'd be heavy, but it'd be a great lens. Yeah.
So all of you with gimbals, definitely experiment with it, because the default on a gimbal is a wide lens. Experiment with medium lenses. Experiment
even
with
50, yeah.
telephoto lenses. I mean, I haven't tried a 70 to 200 yet, but just try throwing something a little deeper. Experiment with it. Start practice with it in your off hours. And you practice following with it, because it's hard. But when you land those shots, I mean, they're just so beautiful. It's just like, it's going to really raise the cinematic value of your films.
And on a wedding day, I don't do, when I'm experimenting and I know what I'm doing is really hard to get the shot, I'm not using it for crucial moments that I don't want to miss. I do it once I feel like I have the shot, or maybe just people walking around and entering a space, and I'm like following people in, or maybe portraits is 2 hours long and I got what I needed, and then I'll start playing a little bit. So, yeah.
Okay. I heard something. Camera and lens, IBIS, part of the whole movement thing. If you're you can handhold movement if your camera or lenses have IBIS. Still a lot easier on a gimbal. You'll get way better movement, but you can do something on that. Miscellaneous stuff, color grading. Color grading can define your style. Are you a fan of the natural look, or do you like to have some of your major colors muted a bit? We were talking about this when we were talking about kind of your branding, kind of your unique look. This is a huge factor with modern day filmmakers and how they achieve their unique look, especially since so many people have similar looking footage from similar movements and similar looking cameras. So a lot of people use this to define their style and separate themselves from the pack. And muted colors are in, especially with a lot of filmmakers, kind of like the white and reverie LUTs. A lot of people, they're kind of going for that type of look and feel. Really, really popular with a lot of clients, and it's really, really trendy right now. Locations. Arrive early to scout the venue. If you've never been there before, oftentimes photographers don't do this and are having a couple of great locations. Go for the first look.
We already saw that. Where's that
Yeah,
going?
I put it under
okay.
cinematic because you want to having a good location is important for your cinematic edit. You don't want to shoot in front of a garbage dumpster. And I know it sounds stupid, but you'd be surprised at how often you're shooting in front of something that is just not engaging at all. I like to have deep backgrounds. I don't like to shoot up against flat objects. A lot of photographers like to shoot up against flat walls. It doesn't do anything for me for video. I like depth. I like seeing multiple layers of depth. For me, that's a more cinematic look. So just being mindful of locations, especially when the photographer doesn't know where to go for the first look, or they need help. Maybe it's raining or cloudy or something's happening and they need some help. Having some locations on hand that are good for you. It could be the difference between having a good wedding film and a great wedding film. Just because that one location that's where you do your portraits or your first look could really add a lot to the film. Perspective, vary your perspective, shoot from a lower vantage point. If you're filming a child, get up high to show. Okay, that's two separate thoughts. Shoot from a lower vantage point if you're filming a child, especially if the flower girl comes in, get low.
Instead of just pointing down.
The perspective just looks way better. So many things like that, just vary your perspective. get on stage. If there's a band, shoot into the crowd to get some wides. Be on the floor, shooting into it. Get your toast from a lower angle, looking high. Varying your perspectives is a great cinematic tool that can give you just a better look and feel for your film. Show the action. Not every frame has to be filled with your subject. If they're writing a letter, just show the hand and just show their hand and the letter. Maybe just show the bride's hand holding the bouquet, etc. If I'm getting a shot of Ryan writing right now, with sequencing my shots, I can just get a shot on this level of him writing. Then I can get real up close, just showing the pen movement. Just having that different perspective in different parts of the day will help you vary your shots. I'm a big proponent of varying the types of shots you get, because the more variance you have, the better of a cinematic feel you're going to have on your film. Because if all the shots start looking the same focal length, from the same perspective, everything looks the same, the viewer is going to disengage and lose interest.
About perspective, do you care about the 180 rule when it comes to B-roll? When it comes to this type of
Only when you're sequencing with other stuff.
What about like when there's two subjects, I suppose, like in this toast?
Well, I mean, if it's,
Yeah,
that's more A-roll, I think, than B-roll.
Like letter writing, we see him sitting.
Oh, yeah. We will follow the 180 roll.
Keep it that way.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah, we don't want him to switch sides of the frame suddenly. Right.
I kind of talked about this before about the backgrounds. Be thinking about your backgrounds. You don't want to shoot that direction and have the garbage can in the background. I know it sounds stupid, but we do it all the time when we're outside with portraits, and you're looking and there's a garbage can in the background. There's the truck that's offloading, the chairs for the ceremony in the background, or the food truck. Be mindful of the direction you're shooting, because that can really kill the mood if you're getting too much bad stuff like that in your film. Your own personal style. Everything that you do or don't do to achieve a cinematic look is your own personal style. You don't need to do what others are doing. Find your own unique blend. Be the best version of you. That's my inspiration to you for today. Some videographers try to impress their potential clients. Some are trying to impress other filmmakers. Create to satisfy your own creativeness. I see it all the time. I mean, there's a lot of videographers who are trying to impress other videographers, not necessarily their potential clients. Maybe on a creative level, that's what drives them. I'm more of someone who's trying to impress my future clients. So I'm creating a style, my own unique style, that's going to have the look for what our clients from our branding are going for. Practical ideas. So this is a section again, practical ideas of just enhancing the cinematic look. Be intentional when thinking about the location you'll be getting ready in. Is there enough space for everyone? Is there enough lighting? When to light is best? Will the room look cluttered? Something I tell our clients, when we're booking them. When you get your hotel room, when you're getting prepared, get a hotel room higher up if the hotel goes high. The higher up you're at, the more natural light that's going to come in. Also, you want to make sure there's enough space. You want to make sure that everything just looks good in that scene. Will the room look cluttered? We pick up stuff, or we take stuff out of the scene that's going to detract from the look and feel. Ask your makeup artist to bring a tall chair, a stool for you to sit on during makeup. It's just higher up elevation can look good. This what happened?
Our light went out. Does that mean the bulb's dead?
Does it still look okay, Kirk? Can we finish up? Does it still look okay? Yeah. We're trying to show you what's good cinematic lighting looks like. Higher up, if they're sitting on a stool or higher up, you can get a lot of different shots for the makeup.
Sorry, I might have added those bullet points myself.
This is only an issue for lower budget weddings. If your makeup artist doesn't provide this and you are at a hotel, the hotel staff may be able to provide one for you. Just, the thing is, if your bride is getting hair and makeup and they're sitting on a low chair, or maybe they're sitting on some comfy chair, it just doesn't look good. A tall stool looks great. It forces them to have good posture, forces them to be at a higher level. You could also get them in the light a little bit better.
I've had a bride before sitting in like this cushiony chair, and the makeup artist told her just to lay back and relax. And I'm like, I can't shoot any of that, so I didn't. I think I eventually just asked her to sit up for a second for a shot, and then she went back to laying down. I'm like, that is so unfortunate.
Do you want to have 3 chins in your video? Learn posing. Okay, this is really big. I want you all to take note of this. Crucial to making the most of your portrait sessions. Fun fact, high-end photographers are expert posers, but many newer photographers do not know how to pose. Become an expert in this and watch how photographers will start looking at you for direction. Posing is huge. Like if you guys, how many of you guys have worked with a photographer or worked during portraits and the posing was just awful and you didn't get the shots you needed? A lot of times it's because the photographer doesn't know how to pose or they're doing some weird stuff that doesn't work for video. Know your own poses and you will be able to elevate your film's quality very easily, because the portrait session can be huge for those beauty shots in your film. You can learn just a few basic poses that you can integrate in any single one of your sessions that's really just going to make a huge difference. Kaye is going to go over something about this a little bit later about posing, and that'll help you guys out just know how to do it yourselves.
I think technically it was supposed to be after this one, but I don't know if we have time today.
Okay. Light the toast. We'll come back to posing, and we can also answer questions about that later. Again, seriously, guys, posing will be a huge boon to your films, because I've been there. I use Kaye as a crutch. I'll be the first to admit. I'll have the shot ready. I'm just like, hey, have him do something. You know, have him do something that looks good for film. If you don't have a Kaye to use as a crutch, learn posing yourself. It will really make such a huge difference. Light the toast, light on the toaster. Yep, we talked about that. Did we mention that your entire day she was spent looking for great light? I don't think so. Maybe the event has dulled down, or maybe you have reached an internal cap of 100 dancing shots. Experiment, be creative. Use something as foreground in your shots. Fiore Films does that and they're amazing at it. You know, when they're shooting through like light candles and stuff, and they're very just like creative and abstract like that. Shoot through objects, look for unique shots and unique perspectives. Don't just sit there twiddling your thumbs until your coverage is up. Be intentional about being creative. It's one of those things where you're talking about when you want to elevate your brand, getting to the next price point, getting to a point where people are paying more for your films, they're respecting you more. Comes with a lot of hard work. You know, just keep pushing the envelope of what you're creating. Sequence your shots. Encourage your.
Or backwards, sorry.
Backwards. Sequence your shots. Are we going to go over that more in the edit?
Yeah, it's easier when you see the footage.
We'll talk about it more later, but sequencing is just basically little like 2 or 3 shots in a row that kind of,
that go together, build story.
That build story. Encourage your couples to not talk during portraits. It takes away from a romantic moment for many reasons. I tell my couples all the time, please stop talking, just smile and look pretty at each other. You know, stop talking about what you want to eat for lunch later or whatever it is you're talking about. Retakes and redos. We do retakes in the first look when time is available. Getting an alternate angle, especially one where you can be closer to the bride than you would for the real moment. If you miss a great shot during portraits, have them redo it for you. Just don't reshoot real moments. Well, we will reshoot the first look a lot of times, but it's just the walk up. We're not actually shooting really the first look.
We're not making them act like they see each other again.
And a lot of grooms will always be like, you know, they're over dramatizing their own first look. It doesn't work anyway, but a lot of times because I don't want to be out of the photographer shot. On the retake, I'm usually on the Ronin, doing some, you know, fun creative thing, following the bride in.
And that way we actually get a wide shot and it looks like you're like, where are the photographers for this first look? And it's because we did a retake and they're off to the side.
A lot of times when you ask for retake, the photographer gives you a weird look because they don't have time for it.
No, because actually I think they like it because they can get another angle
Some
too.
do.
Yeah.
Are you running autofocus since you have your Canon on the Canon?
She does, I don't.
You shoot autofocus, just not on the gimbal. Are you talking on the gimbal? Oh yeah. I do autofocus. But.
I don't. What I do is I set my distance and I keep the same distance.
I keep telling them I wish he did autofocus though. So.
But the way I shoot, I change my center point in the shot. So
that would be hard.
That makes this. If I change the center point, the autofocus is going to jump to something else, and I don't want it to jump. Yeah. Don't reshoot real moments. Adjust your Kelvin so candles are yellow, not white. This is an interesting thing we've talked about with a lot of photographers. A lot of. Do you want to talk about the Kelvin thing?
I guess I'm trying to think when this most applies, but like for candle lights at the ceremony or reception, we do want to make sure they look orange or yellow. I think it's easy to, when you put up your light, especially if you have an LED light and you can dial in what Kelvin you want it at. If you put it warm and you're exposed for that, like for their skin tones, when that looks right in camera, The problem with that is the candles are going to look white. If your light is warm like the candles are and you're exposed, but if your light is cool and you expose the skin tones look good with the cool light, the candles will actually look warm and orange, which is what we like because that looks like candlelight romantic.
Most people will make the candles look white and they don't realize they're doing it. So this is just a raise your own, raising awareness of what do you want it to look like? Do you want, and it has a lot of impact on how the rest of the scene looks, especially in the wide shots where it should be warmer, but because you dialed in your color temperature to match that of the candles, it actually ends up looking cooler, which has this weird alternate effect that you didn't expect. So I encourage you, experiment with your Kelvin, dial it in a little bit cooler, make the candles look like they do in real life. We actually had a prominent photographer who had this big question about why we do what we do, and then we explained to him why we do what we do, and what was he just like, oh.
Yeah.
I guess he didn't really think about it from that perspective of why we do that. I mean, either way still looks good. It's just one of those nuanced things that we do to kind of special sauce for our films, make it look a little bit different. Questions?
Stop me if you're going to answer this later, but like, do you like to use prompts? Do you guys ever tell them to do something or an activity or?
All the time, like during posing and stuff. Oh yeah, yeah.
And props?
Prompts.
Oh, they said props.
And we have a posing keynote.
Can you repeat the question?
We were supposed to do it. The question was if we give prompts or direction for the couple. So absolutely.
I say we more give them an opportunity to get the types of shots that we're looking for. We don't we do tell them some specifics, but sometimes the goal is to put them in a way that natural moments happen as a result of how you kind of put them. It's like you put them in a place, now start, and then the natural stuff will come out of that.
Are you giving examples of that later? Or
Yeah.
your favorite top three?
Yeah. I even have like all my the little sayings that I just constantly say, so you guys will learn what I do. But should we do that now, or do we have time?
Well, let's
What
do
time is it?
questions. I mean, maybe
time is
we
it?
should do it later. It's
What time?
6:15.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, 6:45. I'm sorry, guys.
sorry.
We started late. I apologize, but I wanted to just give everyone time because of the traffic. Went a little bit later, so I hope it's not impacting anyone. Kirk, please apologize to Laura for me.
Everybody wave to Kirk, the cameraman.
What other questions do you guys have?
I think we answered a lot of questions.
Like on Ronan, I know you said you were trying to make just go ahead and set the focus. If you do autofocus, and you're talking about using a higher aperture number, what are you doing with that?
4, 5, not too much higher.
So you have enough breathing room to.
When we do the autofocus, what she does is she does the box autofocus. So anything within that box is going to be autofocus. We don't do the face tracking.
We
More
could. I bet we could try.
It jumps
Does
too
it?
much, and when it fails tragically. It'll find something like 500 yards behind your subject and just completely blur them out. I mean, that's why I hate the autofocus, because I'd rather be a little soft than just like 1,000% soft.
So that's what y'all are doing when the bride's coming? Maybe you're like 4 or 5.
You're talking about like the processional?
Well, yeah, when she's coming in.
We're not on the Ronin for
No,
the
we're not on the Ronin for
front.
that.
Well, we're on the Ronin for the back.
When I do the processional,
well, monopod or tripod. Yeah.
when I do the processional I'm on a monopod, I'm on my 1DX Mark II, and I keep hitting the button for autofocus. I keep her head in the square, and I just keep it that
But do
way.
you tap to move the square too?
No, not usually.
Oh,
I
okay.
usually keep the box turns green, but I tap it every other second just to kind of keep her in focus. I don't use the auto.
Face tracking probably works for the processional. We just.
But the problem is when it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And there's nothing worse than when it finds something behind them,
Yeah.
and it just goes, you know what I'm talking about.
Especially if there's a lot of faces in the shot.
Were y'all at any point going to go over y'all's normal ceremony setup, or?
I don't think we have that.
We kind of stayed away from doing that type of a workshop just because it felt like that's what everyone was doing, and we wanted to go over more. But we can go over it, but we wanted to give more of the practical advice to help your business. I feel like there's so much education out there about this ceremony setup, but just to kind of like I mean, we have a rear center shot is our safe shot. We usually have 2 cameras in the wings, 70 to 200s, and then we'll have like, then we'll have the Ronin that, we'll just get some creative stuff with.
Well, I guess what the biggest struggle I find with your ceremony shots, especially because different ceremonies can vary, is just figuring out the processional part itself. And sometimes, like, whether to put like a sanctuary on a gimbal, because I'm always at the front, of course, getting the most important must-have shot of walking down the aisle. And so then how to figure out, okay, do I put my sanctuary on a gimbal? Do I prioritize just making sure he has the groom's reaction? That sort of stuff. I don't know.
I'm trying to
It
think.
might be too much to go into now. Maybe let's talk about that after the fact, just a little bit.
That's fine if y'all don't and stuff. I was just curious if that's something y'all were.
I mean, the ceremony setup's just like 1,000 different
It's like
things
every
depending
wedding's
upon like
different.
what whether or not you can be in the front, whether or not where the light is, where so many different factors that go into that. I mean, you could do a whole thing just in different scenarios for ceremonies and how we would accommodate that.
I will say though, for the processional, our back safe camera is off to the side so that the Ronin shot of the bride coming in, there's not a camera sitting there like on the side of the aisle. So we don't want our own gear in it. So we'll do like off to the side, wide, really tall. So it's like if it's a church, it's a really wide, pretty shot of the church or wherever space they're in. And then once they're up there and because we play leapfrog during the processional or like after the processional, we got to move some cameras for the ceremony. Then we'll move that back camera to the center, change it to a medium lens, and then we're like set and we don't have to like really move. But yeah, so we play leapfrog when we